Well, North and South Korea have reached a historic agreement ahead of the Winter Olympics. Officials from both countries met earlier at the DMZ for another round of talks. They agreed to march together under a unified Korea flag at the upcoming games. This is actually a really big deal. They'll also form a unified women's hockey team.
Now, this comes as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson warned the crisis over North Korea's nuclear weapons program is at a, quote, tenuous stage.
Our nations repeated a unified message that we have sent the regime before. We will not accept a nuclear-armed North Korea. All of us share one policy and one goal, and that is the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Today, we discussed ways to further increase pressure on North Korea through more effective sanctions implementation and compliance. And countries came forward with proposals on how they intend to do that. We agree that the need for UN member states, especially China and Russia, to fully implement agreed-upon sanctions is essential to their success.
For more now, we want to bring in CBS News State Department reporter Kylie Atwood. We caught you, Kylie. She's in Washington.
Hi.
Hey, so listen, let's talk a little bit about this, Kylie. You know, we've heard Rex Tillerson sort of talk about diplomacy as an option, hint towards a desire to pursue diplomacy. But, you know, often he'll say something like that, and then the president will tweet out an insult. And it certainly seems like he is not on the same page as the president. Is he? And will we see any movement in terms of talks with Pyongyang?
Very fair question. I think, you know, you're exactly right. Tillerson has, for the past few months, strongly advocated for the diplomatic approach here, which is U.S.-North Korea talks in order to progress forward the ultimate goal, which Tillerson laid out in that sound that we heard from him, which is the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which essentially means North Korea giving up its development of its nuclear program. But you're right, you know, Trump has time and time again undermined this secretary in saying that he's wasting time and that he should, you know, stop trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man, which is the name that Trump has given Kim Jong-un. But in the past week, it's really interesting. You know, we've seen Trump change his tone. We've seen him say that he would be open to U.S.-North Korea talks. And he even said that he thinks that he and Kim Jong-un have a good relationship. So for the time being, at least, we have the White House and the State Department in lockstep in advocating for U.S.-North Korea talks, and we'll have to see how that manifests over the next few months.
What's been fascinating about this, Kylie, is, as you rightly point out, there are inroads that are made by diplomats, including Secretary Tillerson, but others who are trying to reach out to North Korea, and that could either be through proxies like South Korea or Japan or China. And what I find really fascinating about all this is perhaps the fact that the president in many instances has undermined those diplomatic efforts has actually led South Korea to say, you know what, if there's any kind of military action that takes place, we are going to be the ones that will feel the brunt of that military action from the very get-go. And maybe we need to be a little bit more aggressive in reaching out to the North Koreans. And maybe the idea that the president's tweets, the name-calling, has had the benefit of having these two nations reach across that, you know, DMZ to shake hands. And this is remarkable that they're going to march under a unified flag.
Yeah, you're completely right. I mean, we have seen positive movement, and the U.S. has said that it's great that they support North Korea coming to the Olympic Games. But Tillerson was also asked an interesting question when he was in Vancouver yesterday for a meeting with fellow foreign ministers about North Korea. He was asked, has Trump had a conversation with the leader of North Korea? And Tillerson danced around giving a direct answer. He didn't say yes or no. He basically said that the U.S. doesn't feel that they can answer that question right now because the negotiations are at such a tenuous stage. He said that, the U.S. is trying to advocate North Korea to choose another path, to abandon its nuclear program, and right now isn't the time to comment on the possibility of Trump's conversations with the leader of North Korea. Now, that non-answer is something we have to read into here and something that we have to look at over the next few months.
Yeah, and that comes off of a Wall Street Journal report where it was reported that he said that he had a good relationship with Kim Jong-un,
right,
and then sort of waffled when he was asked whether or not he's actually talked to him. And then later on said, well, I never said I had, I said I'd have, like potential. He felt like he could have a good relationship. Who knows, but certainly with Tillerson not answering the question, that gives us more things to speculate about. But let's talk about this summit in Canada, what it was about and whether or not anything was actually accomplished.
Right. So Tillerson was there, as I said, with fellow foreign ministers, and it was all of the U.S. allies in the Korean War. So Russia and China actually weren't there, which is noteworthy considering that they are the two nations that really have the biggest pull with North Korea right now, and they are the ones that have been accused of violating UN Security Council resolutions. But what Tillerson was doing there was trying to make sure that everyone at the table was enforcing those UN Security Council resolutions to their fullest extent. And he also said that one of his priorities was trying to maritime interdiction. So essentially what that means is trying to cut off North Korea from being able to procure everything it needs to build up its nuclear program. And he didn't give us any details about conclusions that they came to on that front, but that's something that the U.S. is focused on right now, and it's going to be a huge challenge considering that North Korea has a coastline of over 600 miles with tons and tons of ports, and we already know that they are bringing in goods to support their nuclear program via shipments, and that's where the U.S. is really looking right now.
And Kylie, before I let you go, I want to ask you something that may be sort of a news flash to our audience. The United States still has not, President Trump has still not, we don't have an ambassador to South Korea. The United States does not have a permanent ambassador to South Korea, and I find it remarkable that the Trump administration, President Trump specifically, has yet to name somebody to that position. What do you make of that? We're having these discussions around diplomacy when we don't even have a chief diplomat in Seoul. Is it because, as has been reported, the president is looking to gut the State Department, to trim and cut corners, or is there some kind of a larger issue where they feel that Secretary Tillerson is enough to get those things that need to be done? But I just find it remarkable in this day and age for such a strategic partnership that we don't have a U.S. ambassador.
Well, it is completely remarkable, as you point out. I mean, I think the fact that the U.S. doesn't have an ambassador to South Korea undermines the diplomacy that it's able to pull off in the region. And we've seen, Vice President Pence, we've seen Mattis, we've seen Tillerson in conversations with officials from South Korea. But that's not the same as having a trusted U.S. representative on the ground who can have a voice that's listened to and heard at the White House. And right now, we do have a chargé d'affaires who's essentially, the U.S. representative there, but they don't have the same pull that an ambassador would. I wouldn't say that this is directly related to the White House and trying to cut the funding at the State Department, because the White House hasn't said that they're not going to select an ambassador to South Korea, but it does show that they're slow rolling a lot of the really important issues. A lot of, the really important positions are still unfilled, and that makes our allies really worried about who they can talk to in the U.S. and how they can get things done.
Remarkable. Thank you, Kylie Atwood, for your reporting. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.